Hi, in this lecture, we are going to see how to manipulate data in our database with the help of PLSQL. Of course, we still use our SQL commands to do that, but the main point is we can use the ML commands directly in PLSQL blocks, and we can use our variables in our DML commands. We know from our previous lessons that we cannot use a select query directly inside of our PLSQL code. We had some differences, but in DML operations, we don't need to. We can use these commands just like we know from our SQL lessons, or we can use our variables in these codes. We can use PLSQL variables in a DML command. We don't need to use, but we can, and generally we need that. As I exampled all before, if you are calculating your employee's salary, you get its salary and commission percentage from the table, then you calculate its salary, then you store it into the database with using update command. But while calculation, you store it in a variable and you use that variable when you do your DML. We can do our insert, update, delete, and merge operations within your PLSQL code, whether we use any PLSQL code in it or not. Now, let's make some examples about that. I want to inform you that this will be a long-term course, and we have a restricted data in our database. So we will create new tables from the existing ones to keep these tables unchanged, so that we can use them with the next chapters. We will create a copy of our tables, then operate on it, then drop it when we are done with that. I recommend you to do that with me so that you will be able to follow the course without having any difficulties. Perfect. Now, let's create a copy of our employees table. So how do we do that? As we know from our SQL lessons, we do that with create select as keywords. Let's type it. Create table employees copy as select all the columns from employees. Let's run it. As we can see, we have created. But sometimes you may see that it finished with some warning. This warning actually says that some of our properties like triggers, indexes, constraints except not null constraints are not copied. You should already know that in your SQL lessons, but this is not important for now. What we need for now is only our data. So let's continue. Now, let's add 10 employees into our employees table in one step with using PLSQL. But first, let's look at the maximum employee ID from our table. As we can see, our last employee ID is 206. Let's keep that in mind. So let's write our code then. Begin for I in, I'm starting with our maximum number plus 1, which is 207. Dot dot 216. Loop. I selected 216 instead of 217 because both 207 and 216 are included. So if we write 217, then the total iteration will be for 11 times. Just be careful on that if you use something like that. Insert into our table employees copy last name, and let's say email, and hire date, job ID, and salary. These are the columns that are not null mostly. Then our values. In here I will use our local variable I because each employee must have its own unique employee ID. So I, let's say employee ID number, and concatenate with I, and let's name it with temp amp, for example. And for the email abc@xmail.com, for example. And our hire date is sysdate. Job ID is, let's say, ITproc. And salary is 1,000, for example. And our end loop and end keywords. Let's run it. We have a typo in here. Let's correct it. Clear up and select and run it. Let's look at if we could insert 10 new rows. As we can see, we inserted 10 new rows into our employees copy table. What we did in here is we tried to add 10 new employees into our employees copy table. To do that, we used a for loop, and the variable of our for loop is used inside of our SQL code. In every iteration of our loop, we inserted one new row and inserted 10 rows at the end. Now, let's explain how a transaction occurs in this operation. There is no transaction until our first DML, which is insert in here. When the cursor faces with the insert, it prepares the insert clause. What I mean with preparing, we have used a variable in here. There might be functions, records, whatever. Our SQL code is prepared for running. That means the values of our variables or functions are got from the PLSQL and our SQL text is prepared. All these are done in PLSQL engine. Then this text is sent to our SQL engine. All the database operations are done in SQL engine. Since we sent one insert statement, if this is a valid SQL statement, it is executed in SQL engine and our insert is done. But this is only one row insert. We did not insert 10 rows. We inserted only one row for now. However, since we did an insert, that means we did a DML operation. We started a transaction. A transaction starts with the very first DML and ends with a commit, rollback, or a system failure. Then, since there is no other operations in SQL engine, our PLSQL engine takes the control again and continues. As we can see in our code, the next step of our PLSQL code is increasing the value of variable I and doing another insert with the new value of I. In each insert statement, we go to the SQL engine, do our job, and turn back to the PLSQL engine. This go and back operation is called as context switch. These context switches are a little costly. So if you can make your whole inserts in one step, try to do like that. You will see the details about these tuning operations in our further lessons. So let's end that up in here. Now, when the loop iterates for 10 times, our PLSQL code finishes. But if you get an error in SQL engine, it may finish your operation before looping 10 times. So your SQL codes must work fine. Let me inform you about something more. Even if we went to SQL engine 10 times in our 10 inserts, we started only one transaction. Transaction is a session-based operation. That means even if you insert, delete, update one by one or together, you will be able to open up only one transaction. You can open only one transaction with one user at the same time. But you can open another one when you finish your transaction. Okay, that's enough for now for transaction issue. So let's make an update then. Update is pretty similar with the insert. The difference is only your SQL syntax. So let's change our code into an update command. But first, let's add a new variable for our salary increase. V salary increase, it's a number and the value of it is 4,000, for example. Let's copy that. We can change the insert command in here and make it an update with using our new variable V salary increase. So let's comment our insert code and write our update under it. Update employees copy set salary is equal to salary plus v salary increase in our where clause employee ID is equal to our variable I. Now let's run it and check if we did correct. Let's query our table. Great. As we can see, we updated only 10 rows with using our variable and our for loop. Now, let's comment our update code and delete all the rows that we inserted. Delete from employees copy in our where clause where our employee ID is equal to our variable I. Now let's run and check if we did correct. Great. We have deleted all the employees which are between 207 and 260. As we saw in this lecture, we can do any DML operations in our PLSQL code with using PLSQL opportunities like control structures or variables or etc. I showed how to do inserts, updates, and deletes. We can do merges too. It's just the same. The only difference is the merge command. You should know how to create a merge command in your SQL lessons. So there is no need to show that too. You can use your SQL codes inside of your PLSQL codes and variables inside of your SQL codes. So this is the end of this lesson. See you in the next lessons.